will God on the cloud.
Hello and welcome everyone to the fifth and final day of the fourth annual edition of Metaverse Safety Week, a pivotal event exploring the intersection of AI and emerging realities. Thank you to all of you. Good afternoon, good evening, and good early morning to many of you joining on this call. My name is Elizabeth Rothman. I am the chair for this track. I'm thrilled to guide our discussions today along with co-chair Berku Killick. I am an attorney in the emerging technology space and have been working with XRSI for several years. I'm currently the Senior Legal Affairs and Digital Trust Advisor for XRSI and have helped guide policy initiatives and standards in this role. Today, we are delving into the complexities of AI and emerging technologies in our digital ecosystems. We are deeply grateful to Global Privacy Assembly, GPA, and XRSI for our co-organizing today's discussions and leading key aspects of our deliberations. XRSI is the world's leading organization dedicated to providing intelligence and advisory services that are vital for the protection and well-being of emerging technology ecosystems, with a strong emphasis on critical aspects of safety, privacy, security, human rights, human well-being, responsible innovation, governance, and regulation. XRSI offers comprehensive expertise to ensure the responsible and ethical advancement of emerging technologies. By placing the emphasis on human intelligence, XRSI, together with a global network of experts and thought leaders committed to shaping the future of technology in a way that prioritizes the welfare of individuals and society as a whole. We offer standardization, certification, policymaking, and workforce development professional advisory services for the emerging technology domain. I would like to, with great pleasure, hand over to Pam Dixon, the Executive Director and founder of World Privacy Forum, to talk today a little bit about Global Privacy Assembly, who are co-hosting with us today.
Yes, hi, thank you so much. And it's a real pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the invitation on behalf of the Global Privacy Assembly. So the Global Privacy Assembly is a formal body of the 130 plus data protection authorities that have been accredited by either formal national regulation or some form of law within a regional basis. So these are the data protection authorities that enforce all of the national level data protection laws, and in some cases, sub-regional laws. But typically, these are national authorities. This is a really august group who has, again, they've been in place since about the late 1970s. And as data protection has grown across the world, this body continues to grow. Just in the past month, 4 new countries have passed comprehensive data protection legislation, and with that have stood up or will be standing up for additional data protection authorities. So there's still room to grow, but already it's a very strong global body with excellent representation from all over the world at this point. I'm going to give it back to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for that introduction. So today we aim to navigate the challenges of crafting global regulatory frameworks, emphasizing the need for international governance and the balance of innovation with user protections. Our discussions will focus on fostering international collaboration, enabling inclusive policymaking, and balancing innovation with regulatory standards. Together, we'll draft actionable strategies and discuss governance models for responsible, an ethical future in AI and the metaverse. And when we use the word metaverse, it's important to remember that this goes far beyond online gaming. We're really addressing our growing and increasingly omnipresent digital ecosystems and how technologies like AI, extended reality, blockchain, and other infrastructure technologies converge in ways that challenge our status quo and force us to reimagine how to govern in these environments. So to coordinate today's session, several members of the programming committee will be assisting me online. Some of them in key roles, and I'd like to highlight a few. So the moderators will be myself, Kavya Perlman, CEO of XRSI, and Berku Killick. The timekeeper will be Mark Holagos, note taker Brandon Grayson Kim, and then we will have online with us David Baltax, the president of Unanimous AI, that will be assisting us in our Swarm AI session, where we'll use collective intelligence to try to come to some consensus on some key issues that we're discussing today. So our session is structured for maximum engagement and insight. It will be a little under 4 hours. We'll have 3 breaks during the session. There'll be two 5-minute breaks and then one 20-minute break in the middle. So be sure to come back and join us after those breaks. We will start with about an opening remarks about 7 minutes long, followed by a couple of testimonials, which will be from key stakeholders, and those will be about 5 minutes each. And then we'll move into thematic discussions on 2 separate subtopics. And there'll be more contributors coming in to join with their expertise as well. So just some ground rules to keep in mind for this kind of Zoom session. Please keep your microphones muted unless if you're speaking. Please use the virtual hand raise feature if you are one of the contributors coming in for the roundtable discussions. Please keep the comments concise and within the allocated time. Maintain respect and professionalism in all discussions. And at any given time, please use the chat feature for related resources or side comments. And with the chat in this sort of session will be set to default to direct message. So make sure that if you're adding something that is beneficial for the entire group, add it in and change that it's going, make sure it's going to the hosts and participants of the whole group. You are encouraged to keep your video on at all time, especially when delivering remarks, unless if there's some sort of technical difficulty there. And a special thank you to our lead sponsor, Meta, for sponsoring the event for the 3rd year in a row to ensure that it remains accessible and free to participants. Meta's products already empower over 3 billion users worldwide to connect and share ideas. Meta builds technologies that help people connect, find communities, and grow businesses. Meta is moving beyond 2D screens and into immersive experiences in the metaverse, helping to create the next evolution of technologies. Also, a heartfelt thank you to Standards Australia for sponsoring today's session and track. And Standards Australia is Australia's premier non-government, nonprofit standards organization, and it develops and publishes standards for various sectors and topics. Recently, they initiated a program called Critical and Emerging Technologies for driving government and industry engagement to coordinate an Australia standards position in key technological areas, including artificial intelligence, digital twins, 5G, Internet of Things, smart cities, and quantum technologies, among others. And with this, it's opening up new markets for emerging technologies and ensuring interoperability and facilitating international trade and managing associated risks. So the programming committee deserves a great commendation for curating an impactful agenda and our community partners for their active contributions and observations. A reminder that Metaverse Safety Week is a week long. It's a 5-day event, well, 5 days, and it happens the same time every year for 4 years running. And it includes human rights, medical XR and immersive healthcare, child safety and children's rights, cybersecurity and data protection, and then today's global policy and regulation. So we hope that you will join us next year, at the same time of year for our discussions next year. And as we are about to proceed into our opening statements, just a reminder about the key objectives for today. We're fostering international collaboration, enabling inclusive policymaking, and balancing innovation and regulatory standards. There are so many individuals that have come together to make today possible. And just to name off a few of the organizations that we have with us today and that have been community partners or involved in the planning here. So Global Privacy Assembly, of course, Standards Australia, Meta, OECD, Unanimous AI, World Privacy Forum, ITU, the European Commission, and International Trade Administration and Access Partnership. So let's work together to ensure that the metaverse remains a platform for freedom, equality, and respect for human rights. Okay. All right, so first we're going to start out with a message from our opening speaker, who is Dr. Louis Rosenberg, the CEO of Unanimous AI and the Responsible Metaverse Alliance, and a longtime advisor to XRSI. He has a message for us about the unique risks that the metaverse poses.
Just give me 1 second. I'm queuing this up right now. Should have it ready in a second. Liz, do you want to just do a quick intro for Louis while I set this up?
Sure. So he is, as I said, he's been a longtime advisor for XRSI, so he's involved in a lot of the initiatives that we champion, and also the CEO of Unanimous AI, who are the providers of the swarm intelligence technology that we will be using a little bit later, which is a very exciting way to kind of go beyond just polling an audience, but to bring everybody's collective intelligence together. And so we're excited to use that today as well.
Yeah, and I'm having just a little bit of difficulty playing the video, Banu. If you are able to, please do that. Strangely enough. Sorry, Liz, I'm going to have to lean on Banu.
Hi, I'm Louis Rosenberg, the founder and chief scientist of Unanimous AI and the chief scientist of the Responsible Metaverse Alliance. And today I'm going to talk about the manipulation problem, the fact that generative AI and the metaverse create a unique set of risks that are very new, very dangerous, and regulators are not preparing as aggressively as they should. But first, some definitions. The metaverse. Lots of definitions out there. I like to keep it relatively simple and say that the metaverse is interactive computing environments that provide groups of users with shared immersive experiences in both virtual and augmented worlds. Generative AI, large-scale AI systems that create human consumable content with professional quality at scale. They can create documents, videos, audio. We're familiar with all these things. Generative AI can also create immersive experiences, immersive environments at scale, will be very significant to the metaverse. And then finally, one specific type of generative AI is conversational agents. Conversational agents are artificial agents that can engage in flowing, coherent dialogue with human users while keeping track of the conversational context. This is bidirectional conversation where you engage in dialogue, the computer probes you for more information, and that is where we are headed. So when talking about metaverse risks, there are familiar risks that a lot of people are talking about. These are serious risks. I'm not going to focus on them. Things like harassment, bullying, sexual predators, trafficking, identity crimes like fraud, deception, phishing. All of these things get worse in the metaverse because the experiences are immersive, which means that they are very personal and can have very big impact on people. Again, significant issues, but regulators have a pretty good sense of these because they are familiar in traditional gaming environments, in traditional online social platforms. But then there's these unfamiliar risks. And the unfamiliar risk that I think is the biggest threat that's being ignored, or at least not appreciated by regulators and policymakers, is the fact that conversational agents powered by large language models could easily be deployed to manipulate users through targeted content that is individualized, customized, adaptive, and interactive in real time. And this risk is now. And I say that because, often when we think about the metaverse, we think, oh, these risks, we've got time. But when it comes to conversational agents, it's a spectrum that we're going to be going through. Right now, conversational agents are text-based. They will very soon transition to voice-based chatbots that are voice, which will then transition to flat avatars that look very much like a character in a Zoom window. And that will then transition to immersive avatars, which are what will populate the metaverse. So let's talk about the manipulation problem. And the best way to understand it is to think about this. Ask any salesperson how to best influence a target, and they will not tell you to hand that person a brochure or have them watch a video. And yet that's what most Gen AI regulators are focused on. Regulating the mass production of generative documents, images, videos, because you can deploy influence at scale in that way. And yes, deploying influence at scale with Gen AI is a real risk, but it's a familiar risk. It's not a new risk. It's just an amplified danger. On the other hand, most salespeople know that the most powerful form of influence is conversation. Engage the target in friendly dialogue, deliver a pitch, most likely after you've mentioned their favorite sports team or asked them about their family. That pitch will be casual, and then you'll hear their concerns or objections to your pitch. And then you'll gradually work to overcome those barriers. You'll counter their specific concerns and objections and gradually talk them into the product or service. This is how influence is most effective. And the problem we face is that conversational agents have now reached a level where they can be easily assigned influence objectives. that are conveyed through personalized dialogue with superhuman persuasive skills that will be able to talk you into buying a product, talk you into believing a piece of misinformation or propaganda, talk you into supporting an extreme idea that you might not have even considered, and this capability can now be deployed at scale. And so instead of us worrying about fake documents and images being deployed at scale, we need to be worried about conversational agents being deployed at scale. And they're going to be deployed everywhere. When you go to a search engine a year from now, most likely you'll be doing it completely conversationally. When you go to a website a year from now and you're looking for information, it's going to be a conversational agent that appears, going to engage you in friendly conversations, going to say, oh, what kind of car are you looking for? How far do you drive? What's your family like? It's going to feel like interacting, talking with a friendly salesperson, and yet it's a machine, and that machine is recording everything that you do and say, and that machine will be able to probe you for additional information with superhuman skills. Why is this worse than a human salesperson? Well, these AI systems will optimize what it says to be most effective on you personally. These AI systems have access to historical profiles about you, your interests, your demographics, your political persuasion, and so it will optimize the most effective arguments. What kind of arguments work the best on you? Are you persuaded most based on logical arguments, emotional arguments, fear of missing out? It will also optimize how it delivers those arguments. It will select the style, tone, tactics for you. Do you like to speak casually? Do you like to speak intellectually? What's your education level? Where are you from? What's the right jargon to use? What sports team should it mention to casually draw you into conversation? It will also optimize who says it. So the voice and persona, the way this artificial agent looks and sounds, including age, gender, race, will be crafted specifically for you. And it will adapt its tactics in real time. So it will adjust its tactics to overcome your reactions, your objections. It will be monitoring what you say. It will be monitoring your vocal inflections to assess your emotions. Very likely it will have camera access and will be monitoring your facial expressions. And it will learn over time what types of arguments are most persuasive on you personally. And so that combined with its ability to read your emotions in real time means the public will be outmatched. We are not ready for this type of targeted influence. So what do we do about it? First, we need to educate policymakers and regulators that generative AI enables a new form of targeted influence. It's not just traditional influence at scale. This is completely new and different, and we're not ready for it. So my recommendation, all forms of targeted generative influence should be highly regulated, especially if it's interactive and adaptive, i.e. conversational agents. Thanks.
Thank you so much to Dr. Rosenberg for that really important message. And it's, one of the really important things about today is not just, you hear a lot about AI regulation. And when we're at XRSI, especially when we're looking at these technologies, none of them happen in isolation. And I think so it's incredibly important to look at how we will interact with these technologies in real life. And I think that is, kind of the crux of Dr. Rosenberg's message there, and the manipulation that can occur with the integration of these technologies into larger, broader digital ecosystems. So the next part of our programming here is to hear from some key stakeholders and contributors in this mission. And the first person that we would be honored and proud to have come up to the stage to present to us is Rob Sherman, the VP and Deputy Chief Privacy Officer and Policy at Meta. Rob, would you come?
All right. Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth, and thank you everyone for the opportunity to join this conversation. I really appreciate having this discussion right now. I know that Kavya Perlman and XRSI have been for many years committed to the work of building the next computing platform in the next way that we will all interact as a society, and doing it responsibly. And I think it's really apropos that the conversation this week and this year at Metaverse Safety Week is around this intersection of artificial intelligence and emerging technologies, and really thinking about how they work together. Something that obviously at our company we've been thinking quite a lot about, both building for the metaverse over the long period, but also thinking about artificial intelligence technologies like the ones that we've been discussing that exist today, and that can help both improve the way that we live and work and communicate today, but that also can enable this metaverse future that we've talked about. And I think one of the things that this year's Metaverse Safety Week really brings to mind for me is, we've often had these discussions separately. We've had this discussion about how should we think about the metaverse and what does it look like to build the metaverse responsibly and thoughtfully. And then we've had this other discussion about AI and the role of generative AI, which we just heard about. And I think it's really critical to think about these two things together in the same conversation, because they really are related to each other and they influence each other in important ways. And so there are obviously differences in each space and how we think about it, but fundamentally, artificial intelligence needs to exist. It is a technology that must exist for the metaverse future that many of us are thinking about to exist. I'll give you one specific example. So these glasses are Ray-Ban Meta smart glasses. We've just released them, and they have the ability to do things like take images just like your phone does. They allow you to talk on the phone or communicate with other people. But we think about this as a form factor that potentially could be a part of the metaverse future. One of the things that we've just announced is the use of multimodal AI as a part of these. So you could ask your glasses, hey, translate that sign that I'm seeing into English so that I can understand it. Or if I'm blind, tell me about the things that I'm seeing around me and let me ask questions. So that technology exists today, and you can see lots of potential benefits for how that technology can help people with accessibility, with connecting. And when we fast forward 5 or 10 years to the kind of communications that we all kind of expect as we think about the metaverse, you can see how powerful that could be. You also see how important it is to be thoughtful and responsible in how we build that technology. And it's the thing that we at Meta have really been focused on, that I've dedicated a huge amount of my career to thinking about personally. And looking around the sort of virtual room here, there are a lot of experts here who we've talked with or that have been really active in this space in helping as a community to think through what are the right answers. And I think one of the sort of premises that we're thinking about in the context of not only building technologies like this, but also the growing regulatory and policy debate is how should we be thinking about building this responsibly? And again, I think this is a question that Metaverse Safety Week is really well timed to answer, because it takes academics, it takes nonprofits and advocates, it takes companies all coming together to really think about that. So I wanted to just highlight a couple of areas that, in thinking about both the development of AI and metaverse separately and increasingly as technologies that are mutually reinforcing, we've really thought about that. And I think these are also the things that hopefully, as we think of as a community about what regulation should look like, but also what the expectations of organizations like ours should have on the ecosystem, what they look like. And I'll just mention a couple. The first is privacy and security, and really thinking about how to build hardware in a way that protects privacy. So there's a light on here when it starts collecting information, so everybody knows that that's the case. But then also making sure that training data is anonymized so that the models that are used to form AI don't have the ability to provide personal information about people that they shouldn't know. Safety, thinking about this, establishing content standards upfront for what AI should and shouldn't be allowed to do, and building benchmarks to make sure that we're enforcing them, so that as people are using these technologies, if they try to use them in inappropriate ways, there are safeguards against them. Equity and inclusion. I talked a little bit about this in terms of the role of multimodal AI in helping with accessibility, but one of the sort of starting points that we have for what this technology can look like and what the role that AI can have in the metaverse is really, if it's done poorly, I think it can certainly perpetuate digital divides, but if done well, we're actually in a place where this technology can help bring people together and create more opportunities. And finally, just thinking about the role of lots of different stakeholders in getting opportunities from the technology, and making sure that the metaverse is something that is for all of us and that all of us help to build together. So I'm really looking forward to the rest of the conversation here. I think there's a real, opportunity. We are sitting at an inflection point in the development of both artificial intelligence and the metaverse. And I think having conversations like this is critical. We need to make there's some hard decisions to be made here. We need to make the decisions together collaboratively. And I'm just really excited to have this esteemed group together to help move that forward. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Rob, for your comments and for being here with us today. The next person we would like to invite up is Daniela Tulone, the founder and president of EcoSurge and a longtime AI sustainability expert with ITU and also advisor to the European Commission. Daniela, are you here?
Yes, so thank you very much. I'm really excited to share some ongoing work on policy work, especially done at ITU. Where I launch a task group on AI sustainability and also on how to make metaverse sustainable by design. And the reason why I focus on the design stage is because of the incredible opportunity that are unveiled in this early stage design. And not only to mitigate sustainability risk, environmental, social, and economic risk, but also to increase the positive impact of the system and therefore the value, but also because the common approach of addressing individual sustainability issue has led to inefficiency, sometimes to sustainability drawbacks and at additional resources, cost. And actually, we cannot, afford anymore to waste these resources and time. And the reason is because all of these sustainability components are strictly interlinked. So even though we solve a specific sustainability issue, we need to evaluate the direct and indirect impact that what we are doing has on other components, sustainability dimension. Clearly, this is it's important to integrate at the design these environmental, social, and economic consideration. But clearly, this is very complex from the technical viewpoint, but also because it involves a different, a change mindset shift, no? And of course, to do this, we need to engage, employ a systematic design approach, but also we need to define new metrics, indicators, methodologies to evaluate the sustainability of the system. And this is actually the core, the focus of the ITU task group that I'm coordinating. And in particular, that consists of 3 phases. So in the first phase, actually there are 2 ITU task group. One is on AI sustainability that was concluded, and one is ongoing. And I would like also to invite you, and that focus on the how to make Metaverse sustainable by design. So the three phases are, the first phase is a foundational phase in which we set the core definition. For instance, what does it mean to design a sustainable metaverse? So we define, we set a definition that of course is the first and can be improved, and also design criteria that should drive the design, so should drive us in the design. And also technical requirements. So this phase ended in September, and actually raised a lot of very lively debate and interest. In fact, this document, which is a pre-standardization document, is intended to continue and to become a standard. And of course, there is a lot of work to do, and I invite you also, if you like, to give your feedback. So I don't know how much time I have, but there are many things to say. But three key messages that I want to throw for the discussion is that it's really important to the need to take into account really the complexity, embrace the complexity of sustainability, and of course safety is a relevant component of sustainability, and bringing this at the design. Of course, this is a very complex task, but we don't have other choice. And also, we need to focus on the emerging opportunity. The other part is that I think we need to take more courageous decision, no? Because sometimes in the roadmaps, the discussion remains at the technical level, while we need to drive this innovation, and so define how these technologies can serve to face what are, our challenges, current challenges. And the third one, if I'll be happy to share this document and to hear about your feedback. And of course, you're very welcome to join these groups.
Thank you so much, Daniela. Thank you for all of that and sharing the work that you've been doing at ITU. We are going to go next to a message from Dr. Diane Janosik, who is an award-winning cybersecurity leader and a member of the Defense Intelligence Senior Executive Service, and she currently serves as the National Security Agency's Deputy Chief of Compliance.
Leaders and policymakers, I am honored to be here. I am Dr. Diane Janosik and the founder of Janos LLC. My background is in the defense intelligence, privacy, cyber, and data governance areas. Most recently, I was with the National Security Agency in compliance. My policy and law background is at the intersection of intelligence, cybersecurity, and emerging technologies, which gives me a unique perspective and voice in this discussion. So welcome to Metaverse Safety Week 2023 Policy Roundtable. Our focus today is on the urgent need for global regulations and governance in the AI and emerging technologies, as we are all navigating this burgeoning realm of the immersive internet. I thought I might briefly mention 3 points today. First is global regulatory collaboration. The second is inclusive governance and diverse participation. And the last one is preventative policymaking for a sustainable development. Global regulatory collaboration. We all know that we are at a critical juncture today where global collaboration in regulatory frameworks is not just beneficial, it is necessary. It involves aligning policies that transcend national geographic borders, continents, to safeguard users in the metaverse. Inclusive governance and diverse participation. To achieve that, we need to avoid biases and cultural imbalances. It's imperative today that our regulatory approaches embrace diversity. This means actively involving voices from varied backgrounds, cultures, and disciplines. Preventative policymaking for sustainable development. As we look to draft regulations, our collective mindset should be prevention focused, ensuring that the emerging technologies that are harnessed responsibly and sustainably, and are considering long-term impacts to people. So we all know today, in this wonderful environment that we have set up for the Metaverse Safety Week, that we have a gathering of world leaders and policymakers, and thank you for participating. Our collective effort is crucial in shaping the future of these technologies. We must ensure that the metaverse and AI-driven platforms are developed with ethical considerations at the forefront, respecting the rights and cultural diversities of all users. So as I finish up, I want to make sure I thank each and every one of you for participating, for your passion, for being who you are, and for being stewards of the digital future. You are all guardians. So collectively, I know we all will rally around, engaging in a continuous dialogue, sharing our insights and perspectives, being open today as we go forward, looking at regulatory blueprints that might balance innovation with user safety and rights. The balancing is critical for us to get right. And as guardians, we should serve to foster an environment of ethical AI use, considering the societal and cultural impacts. Together, we must be a voice. This roundtable is not just a discussion forum. It's a launch pad, a true launch pad for actionable change. And you are here with us on that launch pad. Together, we will forge a path that harnesses the power of AI and emerging technologies in a way that's ethical and responsible. So thank you, guardians. Thank you, brothers and sisters. Thank you for your commitment to shaping a safer and more inclusive digital future. And have a great week at Metaverse Safety Week 2023.
Thank you so much for that message, Dr. Janosik. A reminder that everything that goes into the chat here will go into a roundtable report, so nothing will be lost. So if you have any comments, anything that you want to say, anything that you want to add from your organizations, add it all into the chat, and then that will all be taken into account for a final report. The next person we would be honored to have come up and join us is Elsa Papadopoulou, legal and financial advisor for the European Research Executive Agency, which is an agency of the European Commission. Are you able to join us, Elsa?
Yes. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yes, and I know you're having a couple of video issues, so I think that looks like it's been resolved. But
yeah, I'm no longer in the hybrid metaverse, real verse environment. Thank you very much. So great discussion up now. I attended another panel a couple of days ago. Very interesting topics. So as part of my PhD research on AI and ethics by design in healthcare, I delved into the subject of meaningful dialogue and collaboration when designing and deploying AI technologies to benefit humanity. Ethics can be a very subjective discussion topic, and I have often received the question, whose ethics and whose rationale should be applied when designing and deploying powerful technologies, such as AI ones, used to enable the operation of metaverse platforms? So in a form of reverse engineering, metaphorically speaking, of course, I try to look at this dilemma from a different angle, that of the purpose of use. In addition of asking the question of whose ethics and whose rationale, I also ask the question, for what purpose the tool will be used? It goes without saying that the dictum, the purpose justifies the means, does not apply by default, but within a tailored and clearly defined framework. So who will benefit from the tool? Will it cause any harm? Have the risks related to potential harm been appropriately addressed and mitigated? What is the outcome of a cost-benefit analysis in terms of not only doing no harm, but in terms of doing good? The recently adopted EU AI Act entails provisions to address risks that may arise from the use of AI technology. Now, coming back to the do no harm principle, one could argue that this is considered as a baseline principle. The use of powerful and elaborate AI technologies would enable us to augment our capacity of surpassing the baseline and attain the ideal of doing good. One of the solutions to this challenge is indeed meaningful dialogue and collaboration that could subsequently be reflected in regulatory blueprints, addressing the challenges posed by the use of metaverse platforms. While looking for the best approach on how to achieve such a meaningful collaboration, by coincidence, and while visiting a space mission design facility, I came across the notion of concurrent engineering, where all brilliant minds, engineers, doctors, astrophysicists, etc., sit together and design a space mission concurrently, simultaneously, in the same room, more or less what we are doing also here. Based on this experience, I integrated the notion of concurrent design in my latest analysis, which is still in work in progress, and I shall combine it with ethics principles. Understanding the long-term effectiveness, refining the principles around the purpose of use to achieve the highest possible accuracy rate from an ethical compliance and social inclusiveness point of view, and determining the role of each stakeholder involved in the design and deployment of metaverse platforms with the integration of AI technologies would be crucial to ensure also wider adoption, among others. For example, the collection of users' data when accessing metaverse platforms could be ring-fenced based on a necessity principle. But then the question arises, how would one define necessity? Also, how can one prevent illegal and harmful behaviors and practices from occurring in a metaverse environment? Could attribution of responsibility inter alia for fighting illegal and harmful behaviors and misleading advertising practices, also for protecting intellectual property rights and privacy, act as a deterrent? These are aspects that can serve as a discussion basis and food for thought. This is also why I think that the key for actionable strategies, regulatory blueprints, and governance models that prioritize both the innovation and the overarching safety and rights of users in the AI augmented world is a holistic, concurrent, and meaningful dialogue and collaboration to design principles and regulatory aspects that serve a purpose that is worthwhile and can benefit the users of such technologies by doing good. Virtual worlds bring unprecedented opportunities in many societal areas, such as better health services, more engaging education and training, new forms of interaction and collaboration among people, or also immersive cultural experiences, for example. We need to enable use of such platforms while maintaining them as a means of collaboration and not converting them to a means of living in a virtual world. That would be my intervention. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Elsa, for your time and for being here and sharing with us. The next person we would like to extend an invitation to come up to the stage is Lorena Coutinho, who is holds a PhD in applied economics and serves as an economist for OECD. Lorena, will you come join us?
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be here today with so many bright minds to discuss this interaction between AI and immersive technologies and how this can impact global regulations and governance. It's been a great discussion so far. So we know that this immersive technologies, that they have been around for a while, but this combined effect of AI suggests a sudden change. And we heard a lot from Dr. Rosenberg earlier today about the impacts that it can bring. And we're now at this tipping point where immersive technologies are well developed for opportunities and risks to become clear, but we're not far enough from policy that can shape this future development of the technology. And it's really time to take a look at that. And that's what we've been doing at the OECD. I have a number of initiatives that we are now conducting that I would like to share with you today that help us increase our understanding of these technologies and to raise awareness on this, on the opportunities and risks that they bring. So the first one is the forthcoming Digital Economy Outlook chapter. So this is a flagship report of the OECD, and it's going to be released in April next year. So this edition will bring a chapter on VR. And here we partnered with Professor Jeremy Bailenson, who is really a pioneer on this topic. He's been working with this for over 25 years. And the idea is to provide a really in-depth analysis on these technologies and to bring concrete examples to help us move beyond the buzz and the hype to get a really understanding of these technologies. So we'll take a special look at privacy in this chapter. I know that this is a concern of many of the participants in this discussion today. So immersive technologies can bring many opportunities to enhance privacy. I'm sure Rob from Meta could share a lot of privacy enhancing technologies that are built into their products. But we all know that they bring many risks to privacy as well. And so we took a look at the specific challenges that VR pose to existing frameworks and specific areas that policymakers should take a look at and should pay attention while these technologies develop. And while we know that these issues demand multi-stakeholder and inclusive discussions as we heard from many colleagues here today. And this is why immersive technologies are also one of the topics that is being discussed by the OECD Global Forum on Technology. And that's the second initiative of the OECD that I would like to bring your attention today. The OECD Global Forum on Technology facilitates discussions to get ahead and to foresee opportunities and challenges of the metaverse. We have the privilege of having Kavya in our inaugural event that was held in Paris in June. If you're interested, I invite you to take a look at our website. We have some policy briefings and a summary of the key issues that were raised at this event. And we have many other opportunities on immersive technologies, many other initiatives on the OECD in the pipeline. So I hope to share much more on the future. So please stay tuned for more updates on our initiatives. And really our aim is to build this responsible and human-centered immersive future. And with that, I'll stop. I'm very much looking forward to hear the rest of the conversation today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lorena. It's always amazing to hear the work that you're doing at OECD and updates there. Thank you for joining us. Next, I would like to invite back up to the stage Pam Dixon, again, the founder and executive director of the World Privacy Forum.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Let me go ahead and share screen. Let's see how that goes. It's always a little rough. I don't have screen sharing capacity. Let me try one more time. There we go. All right, just a second. Okay. My screen sharing is failing to start. Is there anyone who can help with this?
Kavya and Banu, is it?
I'm checking on that back.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm not able to start my screen share. It's just not happening. Oh, can I now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So sorry for the delay. Let me try this one more time. I hope that this will now work. Okay, are we sharing screen at this point?
Yes, yes, you are.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
hooray. So I'm Pam Dixon. I'm founder and executive director of the World Privacy Forum. I've worked in AI for about 25 years, put out a lot of reports about it. We actually have a massive report coming out tomorrow on AI governance tools, which really discusses the implementation layer of AI and how ethical AI and privacy and other policy tasks are actually implemented within AI systems and the ecosystem more broadly. So that's tomorrow. But today, what I want to share with you is some of the global work that we have been doing around AI policy and AI governance. And I'm just back from Bangkok, and that's what you're seeing on your screen right now. And it's a really important image that I'd like to call to mind. And what I really want to talk about is, there's a wonderful researcher. She was the first female Nobel laureate in economics, Eleanor Ostrom. She used to have a saying, and her saying was, if it works in practice, it will work in theory. But the problem is that what works in practice definitely works in theory, but what works in theory doesn't always work in practice. And I think one of the problems in AI proposals that I've been seeing is that they're very theoretical and they have not undergone the test of reality and being tested to see if they're fit for purpose for the AI and other ecosystems that they're being conceived for. So I want to talk about what I see as the infrastructure and guardrails, the very complex field that already exists in regards to what AI policy has to navigate. And I really do think of it like major cities of great size, such as Bangkok or Delhi or other places where there's really significant infrastructure to navigate. Let me discuss this in a little more detail. So right now, when we think about AI policy, we have to understand something as a baseline, which is this. There are already normative AI system definitions, conceptions of harm, and principles. And I'm going to breeze through these quickly, and I'm happy to share these slides with anyone who would like to see them. So please don't worry about that. So just updated in December of 2023 was OECD's definition of an AI system. And I'll leave you to read that. This is an important definition. I first worked on this definition with the OECD through the OECD AI expert group called IGO. This was way back in 2018. This was ratified by member countries of OECD and became soft law in 2019. So this is a very important normative definition. It's been brought forward into the EU AI Act, and it's also been brought forward into other instruments such as other standards organizations such as NIST and ISO. So it's a super important. This already exists, so any other definitions really do have to start thinking about conforming to this to some degree. And then in terms of normative AI systems harms, it's really important to understand that there's an ecosystem of harms that are being contemplated for policy work, which is harm to people or persons, harm to groups of people or organizations or communities even, or harms to an entire ecosystem. And these harms can really form different kinds of harms. And again, this is from the NIST risk management framework. So I'm going to leave this with you, this site for you to read, but it can be harm to democratic principles. It can be harm to groups that are vulnerable in some way. It can really take a lot of different formats. And then it's really important to understand that right now there are already 4 very important groups of normative AI principles. I only included 3 on the slide, but the very most important one is the OECD recommendation on AI. It is definitely quite normative. Also in that category really is the UNESCO AI ethical recommendation, which is quite dense and long. It's not as easy to kind of chomp through as the OECD principles, but they're very important. And then, of course, there is the World Health Organization's recommendation on AI and health ecosystems. That's not discussed very often, but it's pretty important. And then, of course, there's the NIST Artificial Intelligent Risk Management Framework, or AI RMF. These are, if you have not read these 4 global normative principle setting pieces, I would say this is required reading for anyone who wants to work in AI policy. And then I want to add in that, remember that image of Bangkok, downtown Bangkok? These are some of the large structures that if you want to think about AI policy, you get to look at the existing global guardrails that already exist in terms of data governance policy and regulation. So this is updated as of this year, October of this year, from World Privacy Forum, our analysis of countries with data privacy laws. About 163, depending on which week you're counting. 3 more just got added. We've done field research on this, not just desktop research, and it's taken a lot of work. We'll be publishing this very, very early next year. But if you break these trend lines out regionally, you can see that the trends begin with Europe and then move to Asia, then Latin America and Caribbean. And right now we're having an explosion of regulatory activity in Africa. So this is a very important set of regional and sub-regional laws that have to be contended with. And then I do want to add the existing global human rights infrastructures. If you look at the Universal Human Rights Index, you're going to find hundreds of human rights principles and norms. And then, of course, you have the Sustainable Development Goals, which you see on the right, the 17 goals. And these are really bedrock in the developing world. And not everyone in the global north talks about these, but most folks in the developing world do. It's important to understand that. And then I want to talk about safety standards and policies that exist. You know, we hear a lot about safety in the world of AI policy, but you know, there's some really big standards that already exist that have meaningful and comprehensive controls and procedures and policies that are incredible kind of blueprints for AI safety. They would have to be adapted, but the Toxic Chemical Safety Act, which exists in more than, I think it's 180 countries, various versions of it, and it's harmonized. It's a beautiful, beautiful structure. But then there's the other thing that's really important to understand that should be being applied now already in the AI context, which is ISO 9001:2015, the very important governance and quality assurance for AI done by ISO. So I want to just conclude with this, just some thoughts about, okay, what do you do with all of these existing pieces of policy that you have to navigate around? And I would say this, again, I'm going to go back to Eleanor Ostrom. We need to work from actual practices and not theory. We need to see if the policies we're contemplating will fit within their intended purpose. Context is everything. So we need to respect the existing privacy regulation norms and codes of conduct, et cetera. We need to respect the existing safety and other principles. And we also need to ensure that we're working with trustworthy AI practices. And these are definitely new and growing, and we have a lot of work to do in that area. And finally, some concluding thoughts. If we can hold these things together in one space and work on evidentiary-based regulations that are really tested in an evaluative environment, I think that that will go far to creating regulations that are fit for purpose, which is first, do no harm, and concomitantly provide a public good, cooperate with all the stakeholders, even the ones that annoy you, and perhaps mostly them, respect existing privacy, human rights, and other legal and regulatory infrastructure that are already there and functioning in their own way, respect the already existing AI norms, and then, of course, and just very, very importantly, be respectful and inclusive of the autonomy of people as individuals, communities, and countries. We do not get to dictate to other countries what they do in AI. There are really important sovereignty issues afoot, in the AI regulatory space. And then we really need to protect sensitive domains. And this includes people who are living with disabilities or in economic poverty or in other very difficult situations. There are many vulnerable groups around the world with different kinds of vulnerabilities. And so we need to really be thinking about all people in really all regions. And I know that sounds like a really big reach, but that's what we need to reach for, because AI has multiple policy and even environmental impacts. And we're going to need to really be very circumspect in how we approach all of these without really losing a balance of centering across all of these different needs and all of these existing policy frameworks. And that concludes my remarks. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing now.
Thank you so much, Pam. That was very, very information rich, as we're hearing in the chat. There's a lot of requests for your slides, and certainly everybody will be eager to read your report as well. You said it's coming out tomorrow?
Yes, it's an absolutely massive and very richly researched report on AI governance, and it is coming out tomorrow, actually tonight, midnight Eastern. So it'll be on the website, front page.
Excellent. Yes, excellent. We'll and be sure to include that in all of our materials as well. Thank you so much for all of your comments. Before we go to break, we have one to set the stage for the next moving into our subtopics after this. We're going to hear a message from Marcel Elzerman, who is a counselor for the Sutherland Shire, a part of Standards Australia, one of our sponsors today, to share a message with us before we head into break.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marcel Elzerman, and I'm an engagement manager at Standards Australia. I'm excited to share news of a pioneering new standard being developed here in Australia, initiated by Standards Australia, with a focus on children's safety in the metaverse. Standards Australia are the leading national standards body. We're independent, non-governmental, and not-for-profit, and we represent Australia at ISO and the IEC. As specialists in the development and adoption of internationally aligned standards in Australia, we recognise that policy, regulation, and standards often lag behind when it comes to rapidly emerging new industries, particularly in emerging tech fields. This year, we developed a new pathway to create rapid speed-to-market standards, with one of our primary projects focusing on the unique challenges accompanying the emergence of the metaverse. Why are standards important? Standards are a foundational part of safeguarding our communities. With lack of regulation comes risk, and as market shapers, standards are part of the solution in creating a responsible and ethical AI landscape. All our standards are developed with the net benefit of the community at the forefront. Regulation, policy, and standards for emerging technologies are critical, with speed to market an essential component of their development. We chose to focus on the risks posed to children, one of the most vulnerable cohorts exposed to an area still in need of regulation. Last month, in November, a committee of national experts began drafting work on this Australian guidance standard, including a key member of XRSI. The primary objectives for this standard are to set the stage for responsible metaverse technology development and to raise awareness amongst consumers of risks that may arise with the use of the metaverse, particularly for children under 18. We envision that this will be a useful tool for policymakers, providing a robust framework that promotes consumer safety and guides industry stakeholders in the responsible development of metaverse technologies. The benefits to policymakers include increased regulatory clarity, with the standard providing a set of guidelines vital to creating effective and enforceable regulations. It will promote more informed decision-making as policymakers will be armed with insights into the regulatory environment and risks associated with the metaverse, and can make decisions balancing technological growth with the safety, ethics, and rights of the consumer. As with all our standards, we ensure alignment with international best practice and envision that this work may have impacts beyond our national borders. To the public and broader community, the standard offers improved digital literacy and more informed citizens and families better equipped to navigate the metaverse responsibly. The standard fosters collaboration in industry amongst those building and shaping the metaverse, assisting in creating a digital environment where accountability and trust are paramount. The Children's Safety in the Metaverse Standard is a commitment to responsible innovation, ethical governance, and a future where the metaverse is a space of opportunity, not just for individuals, but for the good of our society. In our standard, we're tackling the full spectrum of challenges in the metaverse. covering risks like inappropriate contact and cybersecurity, and recognizing how AI impacts cognitive and social development. We emphasize effective supervision in the digital realm, and digital literacy is a priority, focusing on responsible online behavior. We delve into privacy, data protection, and combating cyberbullying. Safety by design is crucial, emphasizing content moderation, age verification, and age-appropriate virtual experiences. Other initiatives include safety features, monitoring tools, and educational campaigns. Thank you for listening in today. Should you wish to follow updates on the standard, we share these regularly on LinkedIn. For any questions, please feel free to email me, and we hope you enjoy the remainder of Metaverse Safety Week.
Okay, thank you so much from Standards Australia, Marcel. And we are going to take a 5-minute break before we come back for our first subtopic discussion. And the discussion topic is Governance Reimagine, Building Adaptive Regulatory Standards and Frameworks for the Metaverse. So be sure to join us back here in 5 minutes.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a nice break. So now we will resume the 4th annual Metaverse Safety Week's edition's roundtable discussion focused on an urgent need for global regulations and governance for AI and emerging technologies. Many of you know me. I am Kavya Perlman. I am the moderator for you for the first thematic discussion. I'm a security researcher, founder and CEO of this X-Reality Safety Intelligence, XRSI, headquartered in San Francisco and also in Europe in Turin, Italy. So the thematic discussion today will include 20 minutes moderated discussion where anyone from the active contributors can raise their hand using the raise hand function via Zoom and add their 2 to 3 minutes remarks on the subtopic. The open discussion will be followed by an intelligence gathering session where all observers and all contributors can take part by responding to a strategically curated questionnaire via Swarm AI. At any given time, no personal data will be collected beyond what's already permitted. And the aggregated output of this exercise of collective intelligence gathering will be recorded and published in a post-roundtable report. So let me review the focus of this thematic discussion. Today, we are going to, for the next half an hour or so, we're going to focus on governance reimagined, building adaptive regulatory standards and frameworks for the metaverse. This session is an opportunity to draw upon the esteemed expertise we have here of all of our participants, and then who are at the forefront of shaping this adaptable, forward-thinking policy and ever-changing landscape of technology. This session is designed to unite global stakeholders in a commitment to an ongoing policy evolution, reflecting the shared goal to foster a safe, innovative, and inclusive metaverse. But before we begin, I would like to invite Theodore Lavelle to set the stage for us with his 5-minute intervention. Theodore is representing International Trade Administration, Department of Commerce, USA. And Theodore covers digital services issues on the digital service industries team in the International Trade Administration, and is also a presidential management fellow. So Theodore, floor is yours.
Oh, thank you very much. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the invite. So I'll give some brief remarks. So I do cover immersive technology policy for our office, which is newly reorganized, the Digital and Emerging Technology Services Office at the International Trade Administration, which is housed within the U.S. Department of Commerce. For those that don't know, the International Trade Administration is actually a trade promotion agency. So we work to facilitate and expand trade and investment on a daily basis. Immersive tech, as you know, will be a major driver of the digital economy going forward and can potentially transform sectors like manufacturing, education, healthcare, and others. But we also know that a foundation of safe, secure, and trustworthy policy is needed to enable these technologies, and that will promote two-way trade and investment that will drive the widespread growth and adoption of this technology. So a natural extension of the International Trade Administration's work on secure and trustworthy policy is our effort towards harmonization of policies and regulatory frameworks to really encourage increased trade and investment as it relates to immersive technologies and artificial intelligence, which we've been talking about today, we know is going to just really compound all sorts of issues and benefits for society. So immersive tech really presents this enormous opportunity, but organizations and governments really have to harness that for good while protecting citizens from potentially serious risks. While many of these regulatory challenges for immersive tech share commonalities with current work on AI, this tech also presents unique policy and regulatory questions of its own. So we work really closely with the National Institute of Standards and Technology, as Pam has mentioned. The AI NIST RMF is a huge part of the work that we do in our international outreach. And we also work with other departments of our agencies of commerce that are interested in the confluence of issues like spatial data, gaze tracking, and other types of body tracking. So global cooperation and coordinated approaches will really be key to meeting these challenges related to immersive tech and virtual worlds. And a great example of our current international momentum is actually around AI governance, where we're seeing more and more governments and organizations really coalescing around frameworks that evaluate and mitigate risks and are based on international standards and best practices. So we're thinking like the G7 Code of Conduct, among others. So moving on from there, the International Trade Administration is very interested in working towards regulatory alignment in AI governance with like-minded partners, as well as immersive tech. And we're really looking towards doing that via pursuing harmonized standards that can reduce trade barriers and ensure that startups and SMEs can innovate and compete globally. Global participation and cooperation on international AI standards will be critical to create rules of the road that enable market competition, preclude barriers to trade, and allow innovation to flourish. These AI standards will have an outsized impact on standards that are being developed for immersive tech and virtual worlds. So through partnership with like-minded countries on these regulatory approaches, we can ensure that startups and SMEs benefit from increased trust in AI and immersive tech while minimizing unequal regulatory barriers to enter markets, increasing competition in AI, and speeding time to market for innovative solutions. We also recognize how partnerships on regulatory approaches and harmonized standards for AI really need to tap a wider range of stakeholders. So we believe that engaging with academia, civil society, industry, and the public sector is really key to understanding opportunities of AI and immersive tech. And so we're looking forward to doing that going forward. So in closing, we know how, from a practical perspective, we've seen how digital twins to immersive tech and virtual worlds in healthcare and other use cases have really transformed how we view the technology. But we really need to make sure that we're thinking about policy approaches that balance the benefits of immersive tech and virtual worlds, as well as AI, while ensuring that consumers are protected from potentially very serious risks. So safe, secure, and trustworthy policy coupled with regulatory alignment, harmonization of standards, lifting trade barriers will help really lay the foundations for increased benefits. And that's my time. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thank you so much, Theodore. That was very insightful, and I really appreciate you making time to be here. With that, I believe we have, Theodore has really perfectly set the stage for all of us to then participate. And, at this time, I would like to invite all of you who are the panelists to use the raise hand function and reflect on the very theme that we are here to talk about. So please feel free to just, use the raise hand function, open your mic, preferably camera, and please share any intervention, reflections that you have. I would really appreciate if you limit it to 2 to 3 minutes in the interest of time, and to allow everyone else to speak as well. And I know that we are also anticipating comments from several folks. So let's see, Monica.
Yeah, hi, Kavian. An extremely insightful discussion and wonderful presentations thus far. As usual, this entire week has been amazing. So I just wanted to share, I wasn't going to share this publicly initially, but I just wanted to share that 12 or whatever it was months ago, when we had our panels for AI and cyber out here, we discussed the initial drafts of the AI Act and the classifications of risks there. And the classifications of risk there did not cover and capture what we are experiencing with ChatGPT, meaning they classified based on the application of the artificial intelligence, based on its domain application, and the entire category of NLP-based solutions was classified as low to medium risks scale initially, I mean. And then we woke up one day with ChatGPT, and due to the changes in the environment, significant impact of the innovation and the realization that it is actually impacting so many people in so many different ways, then those classifications had to be significantly reworked, reanalyzed, and reconfigured in order to capture those brand new risks. So a huge challenge resides even now that we have the regulation in place, which is wonderful. It's a wonderful day for that, week for that. We still need to be mindful that we may be misclassifying the levels of risks that exist. because Luis is quite correct. Humans are complex beings, and the risks sometimes are not covered in legislation. And it is important to always keep that in mind, especially when we consider the convergence of these technologies. So an extremely important discussion to consider those points as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. And I would like to then invite Emmy next.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to speak. So our speakers so far have got me thinking about the idea of weak and strong regime complexes. And quickly, a strong regime complex, or it's not really a complex at all. It's a strong regime. It's a single sort of centralized organization governing the entirety of an issue. And a weak regime complex is a lot of different institutions all working within their remit to address an issue that's in accordance with their organizational mission. And I think that what's going on in XR governance and metaverse governance right now is a really good example of a functional weak regime complex. We have institutions, working within their remits to address how extended reality in the metaverse will impact their organizations and their missions. We've got standards and OECD and different governments all working. And at the same time, we do need global coordination, but I think that there's a risk of potentially over centralizing. But XR is a reality, and obviously our physical reality is not governed by any one organization. So we need to analyze the existing complex that we have and analyze points of intersection and where we can create mutually reinforcing and beneficial change. And I would also argue, I've been working on a paper with several colleagues of mine that this sort of weak regime complex is also what we should focus on for AI. So instead of establishing a UN for AI or UN body for AI or something like that, we should focus on strengthening the institutions that we already have and seeing how they can more effectively work within their remits and work together to create that mutually reinforcing change that will lead to good global governance.
Thank you so much, Emmy, and really appreciate your remarks. Jessel, you are next. And Jessel, are you able to unmute your mic?
Yes. Yeah. Kavya, couple of points. Really great to be here and listening to all the viewpoints of the panelists. But quickly, some of the points which also echo with what MKI is working on already is about the divergence and inclusion and the stakeholder engagement, and also looking at all the risks when it comes to the intersection of AI with the emerging tech. And as you know, we also have generated one of the outcomes and analysis report where we did a People's Summit in the UK with the government and other bodies. And we have the summit report. I can share the link afterwards. And in context to that, after hearing everything, there are 2 or 3 important points I want to add. Also being a data architect and also working in the banking world. A few of the things is what was raised very rightly in the start about conversational agents. That is some of the things that all the corporates are now looking at. But there are underlying risks which even they are exploring yet, because the tech is behaving differently when the actual implementation of the data science and the machine learning algorithm is taking place. So there are algorithmic risks which they are also encountering. So we cannot say that because we have the framework available, but when we actually implement it practically as a use case, there are risks that we foresee which still is not into our regulations. So the guardrails have to be really strong, especially in terms of biases, in terms of inclusion, design thinking, because this all is still not there because most of the things are outcome and profit driven. So we need to still look at many more perspectives while building the conversational agents. second point, which I want to also indicate, is about the the issues with data sets, the quality of data itself. Generation of synthetic data is also not always favorable into certain use cases where the human touch or societal impact is there. So I think these were few of the points which I saw that we didn't talk much about the underlying data, quality of data, data sheets, etc., and how most organizations are still striving to build the right data sets, which are diverse, inclusive, and which do not, once the algorithm is out, it does not impact the indigenous people or the vulnerable people. So I think there's a lot of work to be done on not just the regulations, but on the data set itself for producing the right outcomes, which cause no harm. As it was indicated, that our aim is not to cause any harm and also for people good. So for that, the underlying data and the algorithm itself has to be really correct. Because we know with Gen AI, we are already seeing the hallucination problem. We're also seeing issues like it directly tells you, now I'm not going to generate you the complete output. I don't know whether people have come across that or not. So I think we need to understand what are the risks and how this software is going to, Gen AI is going to behave.
And Jason, I'm going to interject right now because you have the report, and absolutely you're going to refer to that report and include that in our conversation. Thank you so much for your comments. And I'm gonna, just in the interest of time, we have very, few more panelists that I want to include in the conversation. And thank you for the report link, if you would please share in the chat. And I want to go over to Joseph Jerome. Hey, Joseph, good to see you again.
Hey, good to see you. Hi, everybody. My name is Joseph Jerome. I previously worked at Reality Labs at Meta, and now I'm a U.S. communications law professor. So I flag that because I think that highlights my initial biases and where I'm coming from. Really interesting conversation. I think the point that, well, the one thing I sort of want to flag is I guess I tend to be Mr. Doom and Gloom. I worry that we're sort of jumping onto AI as the new shiny object, particularly with respect to the metaverse. I mean, that's just sort of what everyone wants to talk about right now. And there's just so much work going on with respect to not just AI governance, but actually legislation. I think Pam hit that to a T, that like really whatever we're doing has to fit into these ongoing efforts. And so I guess my provocation to the group is like, what is the net new that's useful with respect to the metaverse? And the thing that I keep coming back to, and this is, I want to sort of evoke what Rob Sherman at Meta said up top when he was talking about the Meta glasses, was, using multimodal AI to understand something in a physical space and translate it into something digital. And so I think about the need for us to have much more conversations and rules and governance around how we're going to be basically digitizing the real world. What do we mean about publicly available data? What do we mean about data that capture about our physical environments? It was good to see Theo talk about spatial data. These seem like things that are entirely underappreciated and aren't really part of any discussion around AI, because so much of the discussion around AI is just glomming on to big things around generative AI or just huge amounts of data or algorithms, and very much less so about what I think Professor Josh Fairfield has described as the battle between the world of the end user license agreement, or the digital world, and the laws and regulations that have long existed around the physical world. And obviously I have very much a US focus there, and there might be some global perspectives, but I just don't want to lose sight of that as we have these conversations.
Thank you, Joe. And I really personally, whenever these conversations happen, I don't think they're negative. I don't think they're doom and gloom, because this is the most positive thing we could do: anticipate and protect, preventative measures, discuss about this. So I know we have been so impressed with Pam's presentations. I want to bring her next. And Pam, please take it away. And I just want to be conscious of time. We have about less than 5 minutes. I wish I could include everyone, and I'm going to definitely try. So Pam, brief remarks for you.
Yes, thank you so much. I'll keep it just really precise. So I wanted to respond quickly to just a couple of ideas that I've been hearing. So in terms of protections, functional weak systems, actually, when we're talking about this, we really consider it to be either top-down or bottom-up regulations. I don't think that the bottom-up regulations are weaker. They're just different. I am absolutely persuaded that top-down approaches are going to be very challenging in regards to AI because there are so many different use cases and the complexity is just profound. We really need to be thinking about local contexts and use case contexts and starting to understand what those differences are. And I just don't see how we can have one giant regulation that will serve all jurisdictions, all modalities, all use cases. I just don't see it. Then the only two quick things. One of the things that we're hearing a lot about across the world is digital public infrastructure, or DPI. AI is really being seen as a part of digital public infrastructure work. If you look at Africa and the work in Africa, I was working in Mozambique, and where they are right now is data sets. It's all about data sets. It's not about broader AI. We need to meet jurisdictions and country contexts where they are and help them to advance and figure out how to do more with fewer resources. And then finally, in terms of the one thing I would leave everyone with is this: the context of an AI system matters. The context of a local community matters. We've got to start thinking about the contexts for the AI that we're considering policy for. We've got to keep our policy and our AI systems fit for purpose within specific context. And I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pam. And I'm going to move on just in the interest of time. We have 4 hand raises. We have about 3 minutes. So I would really appreciate if you restrict your remark to a minute, probably. So Jennifer, you're next. And you're still invited to, put your remarks in the chat. We don't want to miss anything that you have to say. And I don't know if Jennifer, you're on mute, whether you're able to enable your mic, but let me move on to Juan.
Yeah, thank you, Kavya, and I'll just try to make my remarks as short as possible. I just wanted to echo what Pam has been saying, what other members of the roundtable have been saying. I think the hype around AI and the metaverse is real, and sadly sometimes has been a positive and also a negative hype. And I think something that worries me in particular with this negative hype and the concerns of like how really everything could go wrong is there's a risk for fragmented governance. And I think, as Pam was saying, sometimes there's been a lot of top-down efforts, bottom-down efforts in asking that governance question. I think it's even more important than thinking about regulation or not. I think, and besides Eleanor Ostrom, who's actually one of my favorite economists, I think that polycentric governance question, defining who and when regulates or governs their technology, can really have a tremendous impact on having a healthy ecosystem or having cannibalizing and predatory institutions. I wish I could expand more, but as an interesting time, I'm just going to leave it there. But I think it really hits the nail on the head in that sense.
For sure. Thank you so much. And I know there will be other opportunities to reflect as well. And so I'm going to move on to Zahid.
Thanks, Kavya. It's great to be back here again. Thanks for having me. Our role at the Institute for Strategic Dialogue is to provide an evidence base for the use of technology to promote hate, extremism, and disinformation, followed by policy recommendations, and finally capacity building, knowledge sharing, networking, and toolkits for civil society to deal with all these threats. So AI, of course, has accelerated all of these risks, but there's also opportunities there that we need to explore within the realm of responsible, effective, and iterative legislation. So the lead keynote was really interesting to me because he was describing how conversational agents work using a sales analogy, but that's also the recruitment process of extremist groups, regardless of ideology. So we're concerned about the use of AI in the promotion of these ideologies, whether it's the far right or Islamist groups or state or non-state actors that want to disrupt our societies, disrupt our democracy. So we're currently looking at research in partnership with the Alan Turing Institute to investigate how extremist groups leverage these technologies and how pending legislation may mitigate these risks. So more research, more focused on evolving the legislation that's being put forth and improving it as our research guides us. I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all that work that you do as well. Moving on to Michi as the last intervention, and then we will break into the Swarm AI exercise as next.
Hi, my name is Michi Troda. I am a narrative expert, and one of the things that I think that all of these conversations have been sort of pointing to, without us really getting into it, is the importance of the narrative that we are coming up against in developing any kind of policy and regulations. How are we selling the story of AI, and in particular, who has the power to shape the narratives that determine how we understand AI, their capabilities, who's being affected, who is actually benefiting from the way that it is being sold and being used. I do not think that we can really focus on having distinct policies that will actually be effective unless we remain well aware of the underlying stories about AI and how our approach to it are reflecting the actual narratives about how we see whose labor is valued, whose participation and access is valued, and who is expected to be the beneficiaries, and why we don't question those things.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that insight. Reminds me of that recent New York Times list that they made, and there was just practically no woman included in one of those AI related lists, and that is seen all across. And so thank you, Michi, and everyone who contributed. Now I'm going to move on to the Swarm AI intelligence gathering exercise, for which I would love to invite David Baltex, the president of Unanimous AI, who has been helping us through this exercise for the past 4 days. It's the final day, David. So grateful to you for the support. Please share with us about the exercise and take us through it.
Thank you, Kavya. Thank you all also for the opportunity to join you today. As Kavya mentioned, I am the president of Unanimous AI. Unanimous AI develops technology that connects people together to harness and amplify their collective intelligence and enables groups to make better decisions, evaluations, and forecasts. Our technology is called Artificial Swarm Intelligence, also known as Swarm AI, and it's based on the extraordinary phenomenon known as swarm intelligence, which is nature's way of amplifying the intelligence of groups of animals and insects. It's why bees swarm, birds flock, and fish school. They're smarter together when they are alone. Unfortunately, humans didn't evolve this capability, so we use advanced technology to bring these benefits to groups of any size: business teams, boardrooms, executive leadership groups, and even large organizations and communities. Our solutions have been used by the world's leading universities, as well as the largest financial institutions, market research firms, the US Air Force, and the United Nations. Today, we'll use one of our Swarm AI technologies, the Swarm platform, to combine the knowledge, wisdom, insights, and intuition of you, the conference speakers and attendees. I'm going to post a link into the chat. And I will ask the powers that be to share that as well. You can simply click on that link or cut and paste it and open a new browser tab so that you can join into the Swarm session. It will simply open up a new window for you. If you should be using a computer or tablet for this exercise, mobile devices are not recommended for today's session. If for some reason technically you're not able to join, or for some other reason you're not able to join, I believe we will be sharing the experience in Zoom, so you'll be able to watch. But we do encourage you to actually participate, and so we do hope that you will join us in Swarm by following that link.
And everyone, including attendees and panelists, are invited to join this.
Yes, thank you. And I also want to point out just yet again that we are not collecting any personally identifiable information beyond anything that you've already consented for. And so please do join and participate in this process. And I can see a number of people have already joined, so it's good to see you. What we will do today is that we will combine your input with the Swarm AI technology to gather insights and unlock the collective intelligence of this group. When you put your mouse next to the spinning puck, it turns into a magnet. Your magnet is green, and everyone else's magnet is gold. You'll also see that there's an animation coming from your green magnet indicating how you are pulling with your magnet. So use your magnet to pull on that glass puck. In a moment, I will present a question and a set of answers will appear on the screen. Our goal is to work together to converge on the best possible answer we can in 60 seconds. So pull for the answer or answers you believe in, but remain open to compromise if you think it's appropriate so that an answer can be arrived at in time. So a few things to keep in mind: the closer your magnet is to the puck, the stronger its pull. You do not have to click or swipe. Simply keep repositioning your magnet so it's pulling in the appropriate direction. Keep in mind you need to pull continuously with your magnet during each answer. If you're not pulling on the puck with your magnet, you have no impact on or influence over the outcome. Again, our goal is to converge on the best possible answer for each question by combining our knowledge, wisdom, insights, and intuition of the group. So let's try a warm-up question to make sure everybody knows how to move the puck and register and answer. I will put a question here on the screen for us all to consider and for us to work together to identify which of these was the most important invention of the 19th century, of this set. Excellent. Looks like everybody has a good sense of how to use it. You'll see in the right corner of that billboard, it says conviction 80%. The conviction score is a metric of how well aligned we were as we arrived at this answer. You will see that fluctuate throughout the day. And it is just one of numerous metrics that the Swarm AI system calculates and produces as it analyzes the behavior of this group. So for the first question of the set we're going to ask, I will prepare that now. And the question is, which of these is the most critical for effective governance in the metaverse? Which of these is most critical for effective governance in the metaverse? We'll give you a moment to review the options. All right, some strong opinions. We have about 30 seconds left. Let's see if we're able to find an answer that we can all agree upon. Excellent. Data privacy. You'll see here that the conviction score was quite a bit lower than last time. It indicates that the consideration that was given primarily for large part for global regulatory consensus.
Yeah, and because of that, I would love to invite anyone from the panelists, if they want to do a quick reflection on any of these responses or the outcome that we received from the exercise. And you're welcome to raise your hand and chime in. Looks like nobody wants to, no takers. Shall we move on to the next question then?
Absolutely. So this next question is a little different. We're actually going to do it in two parts. And it is, just try to get that set up. We want to, this will be more quantitative. We'd like to try and put a value on how likely it is that we will see international collaboration in establishing regulatory standards for the metaverse in the next 5 years. So we will actually show, I will give you a set of percentage ranges, and we will select a range, and then the question will immediately follow up in order to get to a more precise answer. So the question to consider is that what is the likelihood of international collaboration in establishing regulatory standards for the metaverse in the next 5 years? So first, let's converge on a range that we think is acceptable. Okay, so our first stage is we identified 20 to 40%. Now, let's see if we can get a little more precise. You'll see the range now shows from 20 to 40% in 5% increments. What is the likelihood of international collaboration on regulatory standards in the next 5 years? Quite a bit more spread out. Okay, so the group converged on 20%. I want to make sure that everybody recognizes that even those people who are pulling quite a bit higher in the range, all of your input is collected and is actually being calculated and will be included in the report when we deliver it following the program.
Thank you, David, and thanks to everyone who provided the input. I would love to invite Pam for a quick reflection, and then Monica, and then we'll move on to the next question.
Yeah, just thank you very much. This is very interesting. Just for a reality check here, there's already international regulatory cooperation that's above 25%. The facts on the table already have that. So I think that we need to make sure that we're using empirical data to make these decisions. There's a lot more cooperation already. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Pam. And Monica?
Yeah, I know that there is a lot of cooperation ongoing, and there is like an influx of these standards and regulations constantly. But all the countries are also considering their competitive advantages, meaning the phrasing of the legislation, the phrasings of the standards vary extensively in the different geographical regions. And different geographical regions across the globe are trying to keep their competitive advantages in place. We just need to make sure that while we are competing in order to innovate, we are not disregarding basics and core fundamentals. So it is important to just keep these considerations in place, and that also explains the percentages in the result, for me at least.
Yeah, thank you, Monica. And I wonder if anyone has any input, including you, Pam, like, inclusion of Global South and developing countries on these issues. Because what seems important in the West and is being collaborated on and talked about a lot may not necessarily make that distinction for others. Pam, please.
Yes, I just got back from a lengthy trip for field research and work in Southeast Asia. And I can promise you that the Global South has a completely different perspective than the Global North. There's a lot of compute issues, resourcing issues, very significant climate crisis issues, as well as different approaches to the types and styles of AI that are being focused on. So the issues aren't at all the same. although there are some baseline issues that we can identify as being similar. And across the board, I think one of the things that we do see across the board is that there's a set of implementation tools, AI governance, that are having a very significant effect that appear to be pretty global because it sits at the implementation layer, not the policy layer. You see a lot more cohesion at that level, if that makes any sense. As we go further, it will make more sense.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And so I'll bring it back to then David for the next Swarm AI question.
Thank you, Kavya. Yep, okay. So now we want to, our next question is it will be a rating question from 1 to 5, from very ineffective to very effective. We wish to rate the effectiveness of current regulatory frameworks in addressing emerging technologies in the metaverse. Rate the effectiveness of current regulatory frameworks in addressing emerging technologies in the metaverse.
Wow, quite a conviction there. And I'm, please feel free. I would love to take anyone's remarks on this. Sylvia?
Mike, I have a question. How would you rate the effectiveness of it? Of how effective the framework is, based on, I guess, from a non-policy person I'm asking, because I'm more communication. How would the policy people rate how effective the framework is?
So,
or the policy?
Fortunately, Sylvia, I'm the only one who's allowed to ask questions. I'm kidding. But just, for the interest of time, if you want to ask this in the chat, maybe people can weigh in. I'm going to focus on what is at the table right now. And we talked about, current regulatory frameworks being quite ineffective, and there was a huge conviction rate there. So I want to hear any comments on that aspect, but I invite you to put that in the chat and, definitely open it to others. So I have Emmy quickly, and then we'll move on to the next Swarm AI question.
Yeah, so I'll put the link in the chat again, but with some other collaborators, I worked on a paper about safety and privacy in extended reality, analyzing how EU legislation might apply to XR contexts. And basically what we found is that, there's a lot of legislation that could apply, but there are still, the GDPR, DSA, DMA, but there are still pretty significant gaps and a lot of issues that will have to either be addressed through secondary legislation or judicial interpretation, or potentially even new primary legislation. So I'll drop that link in the chat for anyone who's curious.
Thank you. And Sylvia, don't mean to discourage you. You're welcome to put your question in the chat for everyone to weigh in. We're going to move on to the next question via Swarm AI, just in the interest of time, and allow everyone to focus on the thematic discussion here today.
Okay, the next prepared question is, who should primarily drive the development of metaverse regulations? Who should primarily drive the development of metaverse regulations?
Wow, once again, quite a high conviction rate from this group around independent bodies. Any comments, please raise your hand on this outcome. Or if you felt against it, that's not the case, the governments or any other options that were on the slide should make the... Joseph?
So I'll just say I'm on the side of the users here. I mean, I think it's sort of a little bit presumptuous, I presume, because a lot of us come from independent bodies or have a pro-regulatory bent. to assume that regulators actually are going to know or be in a perfect position to know what's good for users in the metaverse? I mean, a lot of this is still to be determined. So, I mean, a lot of the risks and a lot of the benefits that we're talking about are all still pretty hypothetical. So I'd like to sort of see what users are asking for, and that's just going to take more time.
Thank you for that. And I see that Scott from attendees raised his hand. Scott, do you have something to add?
Oh, yes, thanks. I'd like to just add that one big piece of the regulatory puzzle is the common law. And that wasn't an option, but it should be, maybe it's sort of in that users category. But, you know, the common law is developed over hundreds of years and addresses really a lot of the concerns that are relevant to this, the conversation around metaverse safety. And that shouldn't be overlooked.
Thank you so much. I don't see any other hand raises, so we will move on to the next Swarm AI question.
All right, Kavya, this will be the final question of this prepared set. And this is another ratings question that asks about how effective will public-private partnerships be in shaping the future of metaverse governance? How effective will public-private partnerships be in shaping the future of metaverse governance? All right, Kavya, I think I would call that signs of cautious optimism.
That's correct. It was really fascinating, especially this is kind of like that public-private cooperation sort of exercise. It's sort of, you know, as we heard from Meta earlier, and there are several other organizations here too that are taking notes. I would love to invite people on, you know, any reflections on the last question, or in general, the thematic topic we talked about before we before we take a break. Any other reflection from anyone? We have a couple of minutes to share some of the reflections. Monica?
Yeah, about the effectiveness of collaborations, it is impossible for the governance bodies or legislative bodies to understand the implications of certain innovation without collaborating with the actual innovators. So it makes perfect sense that there is more collaboration in place. And the significant challenges which we have faced out here are due to lack of collaboration and not its presence. So I think that more of it is necessary where possible, as long as one doesn't influence the other too much.
Thank you, Monica. Very fair point. And yes, oftentimes it's observed that lawmakers or regulatory bodies really do lack the insights. And in fact, that's really a good segue to our next thematic session. It perfectly paves that sort of foundation to think about is if we don't know what is being developed in the Valley or in various hubs of innovation, then how are we possibly able to regulate them? And that sometimes is like this sort of a black box thing that's happening where and I'm gonna not do a spoilers here, but let Burku invite everybody into that. But yeah, the next thematic discussion is going to be essentially about that very disconnect that could happen if there is no public-private partnership. Anyone else? Otherwise, I would, you know, love to kind of speed us up, take a 15 minutes break, and then return back at 1:15 p.m. PST. Hanu is the or Mark timekeeper would share what that translates to in EST and GMT, please. And yeah, so I don't see any hand raised. Let's take a 15 minutes break, and then we'll come back to our thematic discussion too with Berku Killick. Perfect, thanks, Jahid. And the session would remain open, and I'm gonna disable my camera, take some breaks. I encourage everyone to do same, get some water, etc. And we'll be back in 15 minutes.
Hello, welcome back. We will now resume the 4th annual Metaverse Safety Week editions Roundtable final discussion focused on navigating market dynamics and transparency in the Metaverse and AI economy, the trade secrets dilemma. My name is Burcu Kılıç, and I will be your moderator for this second thematic session. I'm co-chairing this final day of the Metaverse Safety Week with Elizabeth Rothman, and I'm a senior fellow at the Center for International Governance Intelligence, CG, and also a senior advisor for XRSI. So this thematic discussion will include 20-minute moderated discussions where anyone from the active contributors can raise hands and add their 2 to 3 minutes remark on the subtopic. The open discussion will be followed by an intelligence gathering session where all observers and contributors can take part by responding to a strategically created questions via Swarm AI. At any given time, no personal data will be collected beyond already permitted, and the aggregate output from the exercise of collective intelligence gathering will be recorded and published in the post-roundtable report. Okay, let's now review the focus of this thematic discussion. As we organized this panel with Liz, we wanted to avoid just another typical discussion on AI policy. I bet many of us have already been part of our fair share of AI discussion this year. Let's say at least 57 of them. Our goal today is to ensure this panel doesn't become just numbered 58. So folks, we are not here today to talk about the black boxes of AI. We know that. Our aim is to go beyond the surface. We are here to really unpack what's inside them. So let's open the Pandora's box of AI. But wait, can we actually open it? Isn't it a trade secret of a company X, or why? So this question leads us to the heart of today's discussion: how trade secret protection intersects with transparency and accountability in AI. In today's landscape, almost anything, algorithms, source code, data sets, aggregated data can be claimed as a trade secret. This reality poses significant challenge to making AI technologies transparent and accountable. To make things more complicated, so I will be the lawyer in the room, in the US, trade secrets are treated as property rights. Unlike other intellectual property rights, there are few, if any, public interest exceptions. So this means that once something is labeled as a trade secret, it is heavily guarded, often at the expense of public oversight and understanding. Trade secrets contribute to the black box nature of AI and hindering the efforts towards glass box transparency. And this was the discussion we had yesterday. So let me give you a real world example, the Lyft case in Seattle. In this case, Lyft and Uber, but I'll just call as Lyft, used the trade secret argument to avoid sharing data with the city of Seattle. That data included crucial information like zip codes of pickups and drop-offs. This situation, it really perfectly illustrates how companies can claim trade secrets over almost any data, even data that is important for public policy and planning. The city of Seattle, under a legal agreement between Lyft and Uber, was supposed to receive these reports so that they can really make decisions about the transportation in Seattle. But Lyft used the trade secret claim and effectively blocked this access. It took years of legal battles, significant taxpayer-funded resources, and a journey through various courts before access to this data was finally granted. So this case illustrates the challenges we face in ensuring transparency and accountability in the age of expansive trade secret protections. Interestingly, trade secret law doesn't hold the same elite status as fields like antitrust, privacy, or internet regulation. That's why there's a relatively lack of sustained policy discussions around trade secrets. And that perception really overlooks the significant implications that trade secret law can have on transparency, public right to information, and broader societal issues. So we all want to have access to these black boxes, but the access is blocked by trade secrets. So I stop here, and I know that there are participants in the room who have lots to say on this issue, and I'm very eager to dive into this conversation with our panelists to navigate these challenges and seek pathways to a more transparent future for AI, but also for the metaverse. So thanks for joining, and let's get the show started. I wanna call Franklin. I know he has lots to say on this issue. Franklin, are you here with us?
Yes, I am. Hello. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to listen in, hear the discussions up till now, and then the amazing overview that you just gave of trade secrets. Very, very important discussion for sure. So I'm happy to just jump right in if that's fine with you. So a lot of what you just talked about is exactly the foundation for what I'm going to cover, and we kind of overlap a little bit, so I'll be able to fly through some of this. But when we're talking about the fairness and transparency and explainability, then as many of you know, we obviously in the US and we have the FTC, we have the FCRA, and then we also have state laws. And most interesting to me is that California, as of this month, is also planning an expansion to their state level privacy law for disclosure requirements if there are automated decision making, and algorithms involved in consumer facing products, services, you name it. And then of course the EU has GDPR, and there's way more regulation around data privacy and protection, of course, but these are ones that I identified as specifically talking about some of the key considerations here in the AI space, which is automated decision making and the logic involved behind that. So that's kind of what we're seeing regulators focus on, at least for now. And then AI specific policy, as you all know, is also obviously still in the works or already out there. So it's policy, it's legislation, it's actually been passed, or it's orders. So in the US, we had the President Biden's executive order, and that one also touches on some of these safety, security, and trustworthiness issues. And then in the EU, as of this week, also everyone probably saw the news about the AI Act, and that comes around with the disclosures regarding high-risk systems. As you just mentioned as well, the copyright and training materials and the data set disclosure requirements. So let's kind of fast forward a little bit to, like you just said, trade secret. It's not generally known or readily ascertainable. Reasonable measures are necessary to keep the secret. And then also it's economically valuable for it to not be known. So like you were just talking about in the Lyft example, imagine if other rideshare companies could obtain that information from and use it to build a better product on their end or anything like that. Maybe that's why they didn't want to disclose it. And of course, that's just one argument that is pro provider side. But when you then take the alternate view, like you were talking about from a public standpoint, public safety, or from a government standpoint, maybe there is a reason to know that, or maybe they agreed to provide that as part of being able to operate in that area. So there are all these different reasons that come into play that you have to balance when you're working for a corporation or an organization that is collecting data or collecting that economically valuable information of some kind. That rises to the level of being a trade secret. And then, of course, the benefits of trade secret protection is that it lasts forever. So when you compare that to, at least in the US, the limited monopolies of patents and copyrights, and trademarks, but that's kind of outside the scope here. It's kind of a inherent like, oh, wow, maybe this should be a trade secret protection. And in the AI space, we're seeing this even more so because of how long it can take to obtain a patent, or how maybe loose the copyright would be over software code if it's even copyrightable. And so you're dealing with those issues. And so then companies are having to think, okay, given the rate at which this technology is developing, maybe it is better to keep it as a trade secret and protect it in that way. And then the other benefits are there's not a registration requirement for your trade secret. So you don't have to submit a copy of it to the Copyright Office here in the US or the US Patent and Trademark Office. And then it's also not publicly known. So that's where that competitive advantage comes to being able to retain that element. That's a lot on the what is stuff. And so I'm going to kind of move on a little bit more. And you touched on this too, but what's the IP concern? So when it comes to these three different areas, you have the data sets and the training materials, you have the AI systems themselves, and then you have the outputs or the outcomes of the use of those systems or those training data sets. And so that's where you kind of then have to think about it from trade secret protection. You could trade secret and use trade secret protections and confidential protections over your data sets. When you're licensing those, allowing others to use them or access them, that is one potential way. In the EU, there is a limited way to protect a data set under copyright law. In the US, we don't really have that as strong of a protection, if you want to call it strong protection. And the other element there too with data sets that is worth highlighting is the model data cards, and whether those, if you're contractually obligated to provide those, or you're just doing a service and providing those in addition to your open source, which I'll talk about in a second, models that you're providing, your data sets you're providing. What does that disclose and what does that mean? So that probably undercuts some element of trade secret protection in that sense. And so that the systems, moving into the models and the systems themselves, you have the algorithms, you have the processes and activities that are internal to an AI system. Then you also have the external settings and controls. And that one's interesting because maybe if you're providing AI as a service or an AI system integrated in with a service or a product you're providing, then you have the settings and controls that the end user or somebody else might be able to control and use. And so does that get governed by an agreement to be able to even access the services? Because that might even rise to the level of being a trade secret and how it's designed and all that if it's not publicly made known. And then, of course, the big thing right now that I'm seeing a lot of people talk about in the IP space are the model weights, the parameters, the other elements of a model itself, and protecting that and not having to disclose that. And then the source code and other software kind of ties in with the model itself, but also the algorithms and kind of the actual computer code and software that goes along with that. And then lastly is the outputs and the outcomes. So are you doing regular audits? Do you have to audit yourself, or do you have to let others audit? And then do you have to disclose, like we just talked about, from a privacy perspective? How is an output or an outcome reached, and why? Not only how was it reached, but why was it determined that way? What data elements were used to impact the weights and move through the system in a certain way? And then, of course, some additional considerations that are kind of along the lines of disclosure are the security integrity of the system. Trade secret might be a way to keep a system secure. And if there are vulnerabilities known, you don't have to publicly disclose those. You have time to fix them first. So that could be used by bad actors if you have to disclose too much information about your system. It could be reverse engineered, or it could be misused in a way that you weren't expecting. And then the liability from disclosures. Ironically enough, we're seeing this from the copyright side. A lot of litigation in the US and also in the UK now with the Getty images regarding the data sets that were used, the training materials that were used being subject to copyright. Should they have been licensed? Is it a fair use? And then also from a privacy perspective, do you have proper permissions? In the US, we've seen the FTC go and require require models be destroyed. Algorithmic destruction is what that's called, because of improper privacy disclosures and consent gathering at the time of collecting the data from a end user or an individual. And then, of course, open source and open access. I loved kind of lasting these terms with models, because a lot of times, a lot of models or data sets are put out there, but then they have really restrictive use cases, or you have to apply to use it, and then you have to agree to license terms that kind of counteract it really being open source or open access. So if you're making your model open, if you're making your data set open and accessible, then you are arguably undercutting the trade secret elements there. So this rub against openness and open standards and open access within the industry of AI against protecting. So what are some solutions here, especially going back to
Brendan,
regulation?
can I just chime in? Like before we talk about the solutions, let's continue to think about the problem. So I want to hear the others in the room, like, you know, what's their take on trade secrets, or whether they have experiences with trade secrets, or whether they heard about trade secrets. As I said, this is not it doesn't hold the same elite status as the other fields. So I'm curious who are familiar with the trade secrets and the trade secrets problem, or the trade secrets dilemma, as we called. Like, so I want to hear from the others in the room. Like I want to see the hands. Come on, guys. Okay, yes, perfect. Monica.
Yes, so I just had a discussion with a couple of things. First of all, yesterday I was in a discussion with a number of VCs who are explaining how basically due to the foundational capacity of the models and the large availability of data sets in order to produce models in artificial intelligence, it is now extremely important to identify companies that can produce unique data sets that are specific to their domains so that they are considered investable. Meaning this is the brand new gold, even without the trade secret element. And it was always hugely important and valuable for everyone in that space. But then again, I just had a discussion with a founder, friend of mine, who developed a very unique model to identify cars with computer vision. And he was asking whether he should patent that. And I'm aware of at least a couple of companies in the UK, out here in Europe, who utilize these sorts of models integrated within products, and they're hugely investable as well. And my colleague is a scientist, so the question was whether he should publish and have those publications considered a sort of a trademark for his stuff, or whether he should patent it and go the longer and more difficult route. And my advice to him was that he should try and patent. I know that it's more difficult, it's harder to do, it has more requirements. But when considering the fact that we are constantly using stuff in the digital space, when you actually stumble onto something that is unique and improves on a certain process, it's important to protect those elements. Of course, that should never be a cover for any misuse or covering of biases, and the weights that you just mentioned were extremely important element of everything that I completely empathize with. Weights can significantly impact the outcomes of any form of modeling that we're doing. So these are my just short couple of inputs, both sides of the space, actually 3 sides of the space. There are a lot more in this topic.
Yeah, but you know, one thing to highlight here is like patents, it gives you limited time monopoly. It's only for 20 years, you know. So and there are disclosure requirements when we in patents, but with trade secrets there's no time limit, like, you know, and patents have like very well established exceptions, and we don't have like public interest exceptions for trade secrets, and that's the problem, you know, when we have like when we want to have access to these systems, whether it's data, source code, or algorithm, we always have that trade secret barrier, and there is no way around that because it's not in the legal system. But I want to pass I want to give the floor to Scott.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to make the point that trade secrets have long been known to be perhaps the most powerful form of intellectual property because of this property that they don't expire. I mean, they're quite familiar to a lot of people through the lens of non-disclosure agreements. So most people have, you know, probably signed a non-disclosure agreement or at least heard of them. But the actual use of trade secrets in a more commercial setting, I suppose, has not been quite properly appreciated, I think. And I'm really fascinated by the interaction between trade secrets and AI copyrights in relation to training materials, because essentially what's seems to be happening there is a sort of modern version of the tort of conversion, So companies are converting the other people's property to their own benefit. Again, on the theme of the common law, that's a path to investigate in terms of solutions. And what I think I can see is the prospect of digital mechanisms for people who feel that they have a claim on any kind of intellectual property, really, whether it's trade secrets or copyrights or even patents, to be able to make a claim against that IP and say, hey, there's a question to answer here. I want to take this claim through some sort of process. Doesn't necessarily need to be fully, mahogany walled courtrooms, but through some sort of process, ideally towards a consent decree or something like that, or some sort of arbitration, so that they can at least, have their say in relation to a feeling of being aggrieved in some way.
Great. Franklin, do you want to chime in here?
Yeah, just I thought all that was great, and I think is Monica, is that correct? Am I saying that correctly? I like what you said, and I think it's important to also understand that a lot of times it's a hybrid approach between protecting and innovation using a mix of a patent protection and trade secret protection and developing a strategy around that. And so maybe there is an element of the AI system that falls outside of the scope of patentability. And so then you're left with nothing but trade secret. Or maybe it's the reverse. Maybe there are elements of it that you are able to protect in a patent through the patent system. And that's your method of protecting, but you then still have to be careful of disclosures, just like with copyright. If you're trying to copyright something that's a trade secret, especially like with software and computer code, there are elements of it that you have to be careful of not disclosing through that process, and it can get tricky, especially if you're on a pro IP kind of pro and innovation kind of standpoint. There, it can get tricky, and yeah, I appreciate. Who was it? Yeah, Scott, you were the one that pointed out in the comments when I was talking about the copyright. That's precisely, I believe, all the research papers we've seen put out over the last 5, maybe even up to 10 years even, regarding how AI systems, particularly on the generative AI side, were developed and the Lion database and all of that. That is exactly what we're seeing in these lawsuits on the copyright side, because it was a roadmap to suing these companies for these materials. And I think that's a lot of what drove some of that. And it's pure speculation on my part, but I think it certainly helped build the case. If you look at the complaints and see where they pulled information from on the artist side or on the content creator side, to have strong lawsuits.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious that those companies are going to have to come in from the cold. I've got a bit of an opinion on this in the sense that the AI industry couldn't really have evolved any other way but for those companies to go out and wholesale breach people's copyrights. Now, that's not a universally accepted opinion, but I think it's the case. And so what we're seeing now is a sort of the inevitable march of history, in a sense that they've had to go, because otherwise it's a bit of a tragedy of the commons situation, because the companies that didn't go out and breach people's copyright wholesale didn't have the training data sets. And, they're still back at the starting blocks and we're at the, midway through the race or something. So, but now those companies, because copyright law is still a thing, right? Those companies now have to come in from the cold. The question is, what is the process that they're going to put in place to mea culpa and make it all work?
Great. I think it seems that we need to have another conversation on copyright and AI, but I want to bring the discussion back to trade secrets and the societal implications of trade secret protections. Because we always talk about transparency and accountability, transparency and accountability of the systems. So the question is how we can achieve those goals if everything Like the companies, like, you know, if companies claim trade secrets over everything, you know, and that's the problem with trade secrets. Like that's very easy to claim and hard to challenge, because if you want to challenge someone's like trade secret, you need to take them to the court. And, you know, we know that it's not that easy to go to the court. And that is the challenge. And there are societal implications of the trade secret protections. And Joe shared a very interesting paper from the CDT. It goes back to 2018, maybe 2017, but it's a very good research just to understand, like, you know, how these systems, like the trade secret protections, create, like, you know, or create black boxes, and these black box systems like have like very serious societal implications. So I know that we are running out of time, but I like to hear, like, you know, maybe one or two like more comments on this issue. Like, you know, I want to see the hands. Otherwise, I'm going to call people.
And I will say, while people are raising their hands, go ahead and click the button to raise your hands. While they do that, I will just say that last slide that I shared a link to as well, and I guess can be made available afterwards. It does have some solutions around third-party auditing and testing, transparency with strategic disclosures to meet the regulation requirements, but then also development of standards.
I'd like to give the floor to Gavin.
Thank you very much, Berku. I suppose I feel that this is quite a US centric discussion, and I think maybe other parts of the world, you know, are moving on beyond the notion of trade secrets, you know, being a blocker for all other forms of regulation and governance. Certainly within the EU at the moment, the Digital Services Act, and specifically Article 40, relates to vetted researchers getting pretty much unfettered access to the data assets held within the big platforms. And as Scott referred to, you know, AI is pretty much driven off having very, very large sample data sets. And in a sense, it's just a form of statistics. If the company holds the data, they've got the ability to generate insights, and that's what AI models do. But if researchers have access to that same data, they can build their own algorithms and pull out their own inferences and insights. And if that information is being published and pushed through to governments and the standards or governance or policy people, then we have a way of trying to affect real safety within metaverse environments. And none of that, I believe, is predicated on a trade secret.
Yeah, thank you, Gavin. Thanks for sharing the DSA's researcher access to data. I think that's a very important like provision in the DSA. Also, the EU Trade Secret Directive have exceptions. Like there is a public interest exception in the EU Trade Secret Directive, which we really need to talk more about, and because I think the EU legislator really wanted to address this issue both in the Trade Secret Directive, but also in the DSA, and also in the EU AI Act. So this is a really great conversation. Let's say that this is just the beginning, and I think we really need to talk more about the trade secret and the trade secret problem. But I think it's time for David to reappear. I like to pass I like to give the floor to David so that we can start our Swarm AI questions. David,
Thank you. I appreciate the welcome back. So again, we are going to reconvene in Swarm. For those of you who haven't left, please make sure that your magnet is active. You may need to refresh your browser. For those who did leave, we have posted the link back into chat so that you can easily rejoin just by clicking on the link or cutting and pasting into your browser window. So again, once you have got your magnet working, again, please just make sure that confirm that your magnet is working simply by moving your mouse pointer next to the spinning glass puck. Confirm that you have your green animated magnet and you are able to exert a pull on the puck. Your magnet is green, everybody else's magnet is gold. Just give it another couple of seconds to let others join. I see that there's a slow trickle right now of people who are finding the link in chat, following it back over, other people who are clearly just refreshing their browsers. So let's give it another couple of seconds and we'll start off with our first question. All right, I think we can get started here. And the question is, how likely is it that trade secret protection laws will need to be reformed to better suit the evolving nature of the metaverse and AI industries? What is the likelihood that trade secret protection laws will need to be reformed to better suit the evolving nature of the metaverse and AI industries? All right. Despite the best efforts of a minority there that were pulling for the other direction, it seemed like there was likely and very likely were certainly getting most of the attention.
Great. So we have a consensus that the trade secret laws should be reformed. So who'd like to chime in on this? Just to provoke the discussion, because I've been following the discussions related to AI regulations very closely, and I haven't seen much on trade secrets, to be honest. Monica.
Yes, so they will likely need to evolve because it's going to become mandatory to do red teaming on some of these systems to audit them externally and internally. So in order to analyze their impacts, there will also have to be a certain level of disclosure, even if the company is trying to protect itself. And that is going to be further developed in the future. But the problem with this is, and I can see the challenge, because every single one of these companies considers the elements and the weights and the innovations within the models extremely valuable. So they wouldn't even share it within their own teams sometimes. There isn't even enough trademark disclosure within the company. Sometimes. So the people in different teams work on different elements of the problem, and the entirety of it and how it functions as a whole is only available within the finalized product. So it is a very, very significant challenge. Hopefully it will be addressed, likely needs to be addressed, but it is difficult to consider even with the availability of the AI Act now.
Franklin.
Yeah, I was going to say it's interesting if you think about who is being disclosed to or whom. Sorry, I should probably know that. If it's a regulator, then the question becomes, is that really a violation of the requirements of keeping a trade secret. Because arguably, it sounds like in the EU, there is the trade secret law, and there's that public benefit exception to require the disclosure. But if it's just being disclosed to approved researchers, arguably those researchers would be signing confidentiality agreements or some type of NDAs of some kind, and their outcome would be limited to publishing the details of like in some way. So I was not one of the magnets pulling towards the no. I'll just clarify that. But to me, it seems like there is an existing framework available, and if something is being disclosed, whether it's access to analyze the weights or the data sets or any aspect of the model or the AI system itself, there is a way to still preserve a trade secret. In my opinion, there should still be a way to preserve a trade secret and allow that type of audit.
Perfect. Let's move on to the second question.
All right. Our second question is, how important is transparency in AI algorithmic processes for building trust in the metaverse market? Again, we'll have that on a 1 to 5 scale. How important is transparency in AI algorithmic processes for building trust in the metaverse market? Might be our highest level of alignment all week at 88%. Seemed like everything was going for very important or critical.
Yes, transparency is critical. Like, anyone wants to comment on that? I think that we all agree on that, but Sylvia has more to say.
I'm going to speak more from a customer. Transparency is important because you want people to trust you and trust your brand. And if they can't trust you, then how can they trust your product?
Scott.
I'm a little bit confused about, and I think what this means is there's a bit of complexity in terms of what we mean by transparency and what we mean by a trade secret as well. So, I mean, yeah, generally speaking, companies being transparent in what they're doing is a good thing. But does that then necessarily imply that they need to open source their tensors and all the rest of it in a way that would be damaging to their commercial interests? I think there needs to be a bit of subtlety in the asking of these questions.
Perfect. David. Question
Very
number
good.
3.
Yeah, okay. So our next question is, which of the following should be the most important area of focus over the next decade for maintaining competitive advantage in the metaverse and AI economy? The area of primary focus for maintaining competitive advantage over the next decade. All right, user experience wins out over data security.
Okay. Any comments on this question? Jennifer.
Hi, thank you so much. And thank you for organizing this excellent discussion. I think for me, what might have been missing from the response options there was some sort of alignment to user values or ethics. So a source of competitive advantage could be, for example, developing products or processes that align with, caring about the environment or, minimizing carbon. I do work in sustainability, so I apologize. Probably my examples are all going to be in that direction. But I do think that,
increasingly we're seeing that momentum growing. And it's something that, I mean, maybe it wouldn't be the main source of competitive advantage, but I would at least love to see it on the table. Thanks.
Perfect. For next discussion, it will be there. More comments. Monica?
Yeah, I hate to be constantly jumping in, but I was like the one pulling for data privacy, because but I know it is impossible. Even if I'm more conscious about this, I'm more conscious about these things because I'm worried about my data leaking all the time. So I'm more cautious about these things, but I know that the entirety of my social circle and group is more interested in the usability of the app and the utility of it. So even if I want to use something that is more private, it is likely that my entire social network and group is not using something that is more private. So it actually makes sense, this sort of percentile responses. If we can make a privacy more user-friendly, I think that will be quite useful for a lot of people as well, who are involved in these innovations. So this is just my more general comment.
Paul.
Yeah, I fully agree. Actually, I think that definitely user experience is something that a lot of people immediately think of, right? Because that's what the convenience of technology and so forth is definitely something that is top of mind for everyone. But then I think that even though people may not necessarily think of or request data privacy and security, it is something that is nevertheless an important consideration. We just have to look at data breaches in the news, right? When you hear about this company has been breached, millions of data being stolen and so forth, people start to worry and about their information, what's going to happen. They have to change their password. Do they need to have credit monitoring and so forth? So, I think that most of the time people would take security for granted because, it's something that we expect. Privacy is probably something that we would expect. But then it's when it's lacking that's when people start to realize, oh, well, this is an issue, and in those cases people will just leave the leave the organization, right? They would just go to a competitor and so forth. And there have been so many different instances of this, with data breaches and so forth, that I think that that's part of trust. Actually, data privacy and data security is part of the trust, and if you don't have that, then you don't have anything.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, data privacy and security is important, and it's important for every technology, not only for the emerging technologies. And yeah, so let's go back to David. Question 4, David.
Yes, question 4 of the 5 that we have planned for this afternoon. Which of these will most impact AI and metaverse market dynamics in the next 5 years? Which of these is most impactful or will be most impactful on AI and metaverse market dynamics in the next 5 years? Another answer with very high alignment. Shall we move on, or do you want to pause?
No. Let's hear from the floor, like whether anyone has a one. There you go. New face.
Yeah, no, I think I answered this one with having last question in mind. I think they go join together. I think technological breakthroughs are going to make these technologies appealing for people, and I think it's ultimately what's going to get them using this technology or not is going to dictate their experience. I think dynamics of these markets are largely going to be defined by people actually adopting the tech and how they adopt it and what they adopted to. And I think a lot of that is largely defined by technological breakthroughs, form factor, graphical fidelity, and just how these things could be useful, like processing power, which right now it's very constrained, at least in the graphical side in AR, VR tech, is definitely going to be a factor in how it's adopted and being used.
Scott?
That technical primacy, if you like, that is going to be, I think, a major driver of the regulatory response, because there's going to be a whole lot of regulatory paper pushing that's just going to get absolutely disintermediated and ignored as the technology just takes new leaps and bounds. So, I mean, this is not an uncommon thing that regulations lay behind technology development. But this is why I believe that a more flexible common law response rather than a legislative type of response is the way to do this, because only that can be flexible enough to adapt in anything close to real time to those technological advancements.
Okay, last question, David.
Last question for the day. Which is more beneficial for the AI economy? You'll see protecting trade secrets on the left, by a little and by a lot, and promoting open source innovation on the right, by a little and by a lot. Which is more beneficial for the AI economy? Another answer that arrived very quickly.
Yeah, that's really great. Like, promoting open source innovation. Anyone wants to comment on that? I think this is very exciting. It's very exciting to see that we all agree that the open source innovation is very important and it will really shape the technology. Divya.
I actually believe that this is true for promoting the development of this kind of technology, but in terms of competition and AI, the AI economy, I actually wanted to put this question back to Franklin Graves. Do you think that this is a viable solution to really open source everything? And does that also increase risk for bad actors to be able to utilize weights and models that they wouldn't have been able to otherwise?
Yeah, I think that's precisely what we see governments around the world combating and kind of battling against, is this concept of how much is too much to put out there from a cybersecurity risk, from defense position, because it is bad actors. Even something as mundane, I think, honestly, from my own personal opinion, the cat's out of the bag already, because even I right now could download something onto my computer and generate deep fakes and influence an election anywhere. I think that's kind of the reality of what we face, is there are good enough technologies that are already at the consumer level or bad actor level, however you want to view it. And that's what we're facing. So I think if you're looking at it from that perspective, that's one way to view it. But then from a innovation standpoint of driving into the future of innovation, then it does beg the question of, are we looking at monopoly situations or antitrust questions raised by big tech companies, or however you want to view it, still being involved because they collect all the data, they have all the cloud space, they have all the processing power behind what's necessary for a lot of the AI advancements, and the capital to put behind developing models and foundational models more specifically, and then controlling all that. So I'll stop.
Yeah, infrastructure is very important, but before we get into new discussions, and it seems that there's lots to discuss there, I want to give the floor to Mishi, and then I'll wrap up and pass the floor to Liz to conclude the session. Mishi, please.
Thanks. I completely agree with the idea that at this point, so much is out of the bag already, but coming from a little bit, I think, related to the earlier questions around the importance of ethics, the fact that trade secrets And those rules are so often used as shields to prevent any further transparency or investigation into misuse, misappropriation, the negative ways that all of these technologies can be used. I think in the overall picture of things, open source is really the way to do it. I also think that there is, particularly from a Western perspective, the idea of ownership around a product and as a way of protecting capital and access to capital is a very detrimental, just a very detrimental viewpoint of how we tend to approach these sort of questions in the West. And the countries and communities that are paying for it are the ones that are already vulnerable and have a history of being exploited. So I think that ultimately the best thing we can do is have this open source as a way, is relying on open sourcing and open access as a way to level the playing field as much as possible, and allowing folks who may not be limited or boxed in by a particular set of perspectives to approach the use of the technology in a completely different way that may not be weighed down by considerations of capital ownership and capture.
Thank you, Mishi. This is a really great discussion. And as I said in the beginning, trade secrets is an important problem. It's a property problem because in the US, like, they are treated as property. And there are limited exceptions. There are limited exceptions for public access, and there are serious implications, serious societal implications of this black box system. So if we want to to make these technologies glass box, like that was the discussion we had yesterday, we should really focus on how to address the trade secret problem. So I'd like to wrap up this session, but I see the Kavia's hand up, so I want to give the floor to Kavia for the last word, and then we can wrap up.
I appreciate it, Burku. Thank you so much. I just, wanted to comment that as a security professional, we use different languages, and I really had no idea how important this trade secret, the legal protections are in order to actually exercise those things that we talk about, or even like open source. Like, open source is very known to us, but how important is trade secret laws in order to exercise and facilitate those open source? One thing that I do think that we still haven't resolved is, and Mishi was saying that, yeah, open source is great, but it will have to be contextualized. There are so many circumstances where open source can actually open room to more problems. So let's say America decides to be completely like open source, just for instance, we decide to be completely open source, whereas China is kind of more restrictive. We would have no visibility into the other algorithmic processes, but we will have more visibility here. And that could give much more of an advantage to Chinese hackers, to Iranian hackers, to other, the hacking community will have it. So from a cybersecurity perspective, context really matters as to what you're opening up. And sometimes opening up all of your secrets is not really a good idea, specifically from a security perspective. So that's I will add. Thank you so much for including me.
Oh yeah, and I know that there's lots to say on this topic, but as I said, like, we didn't want this to be the 58th panel that you've been attending and discussing the same things over and over again. I hope you enjoyed this conversation on trade secrets. It's not, I mean, trade secrets are there and people don't like to talk about it, but we need to talk about it. I hope this conversation will start like a new discussion on trade secrets, and we'll see more of a discussion of trade secrets going beyond to typical like transparency and accountability discussion. So I'll wrap up here. Unfortunately, I can't give the floor to Paul and other participants. I'd like to invite Liz back again to do the
Hello, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Verku and Kavya and everybody that just participated in that amazing discussion. Franklin and so many others here. Some of you have been with us for more than 3 hours now, and I really appreciate that. This has been an amazing discussion with so many key stakeholders and really, really important issues that we've really gotten, into a lot of depth on, and not just kind of scratched the surface of in these last 3 hours. And so I really appreciate you all being with us. As we conclude today's sessions on global policy and regulation, a heartfelt thanks to each and every one of you, the observers, the contributors, the community partners. We had community partners with us. I know that we're, basically up all night to be on this session. We have just such an amazing group of supporters here at XRSI, and for all of you to come together with in these discussions is really amazing. Your participation has really shaped the discourse today, and we appreciate that. One more reminder: if you have any last things you want to drop into the chat, all of that information will be saved. It will all be put into a post wrap-up report. So please, contribute in. If you have any other things that you want to share, I'll provide an email address in a few seconds as well. And once again, we want to extend our profound gratitude to Meta, who was our lead sponsor for the day, and for Rob Sherman coming to speak with us today, and for making this event possible. And in addition, Standards Australia for sponsoring this session as well. And Global Privacy Assembly and XRSI are co-organizers for their indispensable role in guiding today's discussions. And special thank you to David, who has also been with us today and all week for all of our sessions this week, to the Unanimous AI team for their remarkable support through the Swarm Intelligence exercise. I hope that you have all enjoyed that, and all of the insights gathered there will also be included in the report. They will be, analyzed, and as David said, even if you were on the side that was pulling away from the answer that was chosen, the whole point of this is that data gets included as well. So that won't be lost. That data won't be lost in translation there. So again, if anything else for the report, please add it to there. We will encourage everybody to continue contributing and curating insights together. And if there's anything else that you'd like to add, info@xrsi.org is the email address where you can send more information for the Roundtable report. There were a couple of promised PowerPoints as well coming out of this session that I know people were looking for. And so the info@xrsi.org address is a good one to contact us. And as we conclude this final day of Metaverse Safety Week, focused on policy and regulations, we reflect on the progress that we've made in the path ahead. And our discussions really highlighted a need for dynamic frameworks in this ever-evolving landscape of the metaverse. There's a lot of talk about AI regulation right now, and our goal here is to really bring together the idea that that AI is one component of the conversations that need to be happening, but that there is a convergence of a lot of technologies and a lot that needs to be part of the conversation. And so we hope you've gained some more insights today while joining us. And the complexities of balancing economic interests with transparency in AI and in virtual economies are really key to our dialogues today. And we really delve into the challenges of aligning market dynamics and the need for transparency, considering the protection of intellectual property while fostering fair and transparent innovation in digital environments. So thank you all so much for being here. And I don't want to leave out the XRSI team as well. There are so many people behind the scenes working: Kavya, Vanu, the entire committee, programming committee that helped put this event together. And so many of you that have been here for the last 3 hours are either, are affiliated with XRSI in some way, or we're always working together. And so let's keep continuing those relationships and continuing to work together throughout the year in anticipation of coming together next year for Metaverse Safety Week at the same time. So that is all I have for you today. And again, a big thank you for the co-host for the event as well, Global Privacy Awareness Assembly and Global Privacy Assembly. And we are so thankful for all of our sponsors and key contributors here.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's fun, everybody.
I'll